In the councils of government, we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex. The potential for the disastrous rise of misplaced power exists.
They all come out with intelligence, which is truth, but then they always tack on the same endings to it, which throws you off into outer space, which is counterintelligence as far as I view it. That's my opinion, right? And when people want to find truth, you must be very careful what you let into, because you are the guard of your own mind. And they can be very persuasive, and often they come out, too, with what seems to be certain information for the first time. That's what generally grabs people.
UFOs crash in China and villagers shocked by a huge ball of fire. This is from the Huffington Post, Lee Spiegel.
Now, an alien invasion, could it really happen? The US military is making plans just in case.
So it turns out that if aliens ever show up here on Earth, little green men might be the least of our problems. A new study indicates that instead, they'll probably be more like super intelligent dinosaurs, as smart and as cunning as humans. As one scientist put it, we would be better off not meeting them. Sleep tight.
The Star Nations kept their side of the agreement. They're honorable people and operate from very high metaphysical and spiritual principles. The same cannot be said of the four governments involved. There have been firings on star visitor craft from time to time, and one of the counselors said to me that the humans say, well, it was a mistake or a misidentification or human error. We didn't mean to do it, but of course these happened and did. One of them was even captured by astronauts who were in orbit in a space shuttle where a neutral particle beam weapon beam comes up from the Earth towards a star visitor craft that's hovering at the edge of atmosphere, and it makes a radical right turn at the last moment.
Yeah.
And
I think we've seen that video.
Yeah, a lot of people have seen that. You know, that's just documentation that the deal was violated and that they've continued to fire on them. There, of course, have been various reports of downed UFOs since the 60s, and those were no accidents. It was deliberate shootings because these cabal-type folks want to grab these vehicles and tear them apart and back engineer them and find out what makes them tick and take that technology and reproduce it so that they can have advanced weapon systems to rule the world with.
And flying downrange, we got all 3 stages of powered flight, and as the dummy warhead and the package flew on down range, we were all celebrating the fact that we had seen the thing and accomplished the mission. When I got back to the base with the film the next day, I was called into the office of Major Florence J. Mansman, and there were 3 people in gray suits standing in there. There was a 16mm camera and a screen set up. Major Mansman said, "Lieutenant, sit down and watch this." And he turned down the lights, turned on the camera on the projector, and the film came on. And I recognized it as the film that we'd shot at Big Sur the previous day. Toward the end of the flight, I was looking at Major Mansman saying, "Pretty good stuff, huh, sir?" And suddenly he said, "Just watch this." And as I watched, the warhead, the dummy warhead, the chaff that was put out in front of it as a decoy to deflect the Russian anti-missile tracking radar, everything was flying along, and suddenly, in the same direction this stuff was flying at about 8,000 miles an hour, the object came into the frame, shot a beam of light at the warhead, flew up to the top, shot another beam of light at the warhead, flew around the direction it was flying, shot another beam of light at the warhead, flew down, shot another beam of light at the warhead, and flew out the same way it came in.
Well, I don't see it. Why didn't you see this when you were shooting it?
Well, it was 600 to 800 miles away from us.
Oh, I got you.
They
confiscated.
Well, first of all, the Major Mansman said to me, "What was that? Were you guys screwing around up there?" I said, "No, sir." And he said, "Then tell me what that was." And I said, "We got a UFO." And he said, "Lieutenant, you are never to speak of this again. As far as you're concerned, this didn't happen."
Hold on, guys. I'll be right back. I got to take a break. Okay.
It's the weight of the evidence, and it's like J. Allen Hynek, who is the Air Force Blue Book guy. He said, look, he says, it's an embarrassment of riches. We have so much material. We have so much information. But if you take for one case that we have in the Disclosure Project, and that's a man who was the senior guy at the FAA, and they were tracking this object over Alaska, and it was at one point in the sky, and in one sweep of the radar, it would be 40, 50 miles away, moving completely non-linearly, not like an airplane. And we have the radar tape, we have the pilot report, we have all the evidence from the airline and the government. And this whistleblower who came forward, John Callahan, he said, "I'm one of the senior officials in the government that not only have the evidence, but was part of a cover-up to keep the American people ignorant about it."
And 2 men he identified as officers from Wright-Patterson Air Force Base brought him a model, an impression of a lower jawbone. They wanted a working model made. He was to keep no records, and the mold he created to make the model was broken and thrown in the trash as the Air Force officers left. Smith retrieved the broken mold pieces and put them back together at home, and he made his own model. He said he knew this just wasn't human. Few have ever seen it, and those that have can't identify it. An article in Len Stringfield's new book quotes certified dental technician Bruce Phillips as saying it's not like anything he'd come across in his 20 years in the business. The teeth are flat, no cutting surfaces. The shape of the jaw is different from humans, and the arch is much deeper. If it isn't identifiable as animal or human by people who should know, what is it? Could this finally be the first hard evidence the Air Force was indeed doing tests on alien bodies out at Wright-Pat? Jack Smith says the jawbone model was made in 1979. And if you compare the shape of the jaw in the model with the shape of the jaw in this computer drawing of an alien, it's almost a perfect match. Some sources claim the drawing was part of a government UFO briefing in 1978, same time frame, and was based on photos from Wright-Pat.
I'm Abby Martin, and this is Breaking the Set. So it's no secret that the U.S. military has over 5,000 nuclear warheads, enough to eliminate most life on Earth. But it may surprise you how much it costs just to maintain these weapons. Well, a new study from the Center for Non-Proliferation Studies just concluded that over the course of the next 30 years, the U.S. will spend nearly $1 trillion to either keep these weapons operational or modernize them. Because you know the Cold War never really ended. And if there's one thing we need to be spending billions of dollars on, it's mass killing machines. So while this country continues to lag behind in education, income equality, and sustainable energy, at least we can keep the people of the world up at night knowing that the Cold War is alive and well, and we got our nukes locked and loaded.
Afonso. Foi ali que eu tive um acidente e morri.
Não sento não. Ei, vai, corre, corre!
You're going to have 6 retired members of the military now at the National Press Club in D.C. They're going to say these incidents go back to 1967, 1980. Now, they don't have any recent episodes. That could be because these gentlemen have all been retired for some time, so they haven't been in the loop. But they all say the same thing, that when they noticed these situations happening, they were all told, you cannot say anything about them.
Which is good
Well, the
for
United
us.
Nations knows that they're going to be doing this press conference today because now they're going to appoint a Earth contact ambassador for those aliens. Her name is Moslin Othman, and she's going to be known as the leader of the Office for Outer Space Affairs.
But now the United Nations is getting ready for a contact with aliens from outer space. This is Moslin Othman. She's out of Malaysia. She will be planet Earth's first interstellar diplomat.
NASA's new Kepler spacecraft detecting hundreds of planets that they believe have the potential to support alien life forms. It is studying more than 150,000 stars, and that's just in one small patch of the sky, okay? If the 700-plus candidates are actually planets, it could triple the number of known planets in deep space.
Good morning. My name is Carol Rosen. In 1974, after being a 6th grade school teacher, I was introduced to the late Dr. Wernher von Braun in the U.S., the father of rocketry. In my first meeting with him, during that first 3.5 hours, he said to me, Carol, you will stop the weaponization of space. And I said, you know, teachers don't stop until June. He said, no, you have to understand, this is February, and we have to prevent the weaponization of space because there is a lie being told to everyone that the weaponization of space is now first being based upon the evil empire, the Russians. There are many enemies, he said, against whom we're going to build this space-based weapon system, the first of whom was the Russians, which was existing at that time. Then there would be terrorists. Then there would be third world countries. Now we call them rogue nations or nations of concern. Then there would be asteroids. And then he would repeat to me over and over, and the last card, the last card, the last card would be the extraterrestrial threat. Well, at the time, I kind of laughed when he said asteroids, and when he said extraterrestrials, I knew I wasn't going to deal with that subject. And now we hear on the news just today, this week, that they've slid in another enemy. Only this time we're going to protect our satellites. In other words, we have to have some reason to spend these trillions, to waste these dollars on a space-based weapon system, and they're all lies. This is a system, he told me, that would never protect anyone. Even back then, he talked about suitcase bombs. He talked about chemical, viral, bacterial, biological warfare, that these space-based weapons would never protect us against. And then he told me that, in fact, if you travel around the world, which I did after he died in 1977, I met with people in over 100 countries who were friends. They didn't want to build space-based weapons. I became a space and missile defense consultant. And I worked with people around the world. I became an advisor to the People's Republic of China. They don't want to build a space-based weapon system. And he told me back then that they didn't. He said, go to Russia. They're considered to be the enemy. I got on a plane by myself. When I got to Russia, I had a list of people that I had read out of the newspaper. Chernenko was in office then. He was the only one I didn't get a chance to meet. They introduced me to everyone when I got there. And when I got back, I said, oh my Lord, this man is telling the truth. There is no threat. And I've been waiting until this day for 27 years, and I'm expecting the spin to happen, because he also explained to me that as a military strategist, as a person who worked on the MX missile, which I did later, he said, you will find that there is going to be a spin to find some enemy against whom we have to build space-based weapons. And now we should expect the spin, because he said part of the formula for the intelligence community is if they might have a weapon, then we have to consider that they do have these weapons. So now they do have these weapons, so now we have to build these weapon systems. And that's the formula, except that it's all based on a lie. And we have witnesses here today that have shown you that these extraterrestrial beings, that these craft that have come here are now not UFOs, they're identified flying objects, and we know that they have beings in them. And we have witnesses here who have told you that they can shut down our missile silos, they can stop a rocket going into space that's a test. We have witnesses here who have worked in the classified departments, who have the courage to come forward here to support what Wernher von Braun told me back in 1974 to 77. And I will testify before the Congress that when I founded the Institute for Security and Cooperation in Outer Space, which I shut down a few years ago because I didn't believe we had a chance with this huge, integrated around the world, complex weapon system, that we had any chance at all of transforming that war industry into a space industry that could provide benefits, like Dr. Greer has said, of global warming. We can end that situation of that problem. We can end the energy crisis. We can build now non-polluting technologies. Wernher von Braun used to tell me that we could have cars back then that drove around off the ground. He described this to me on beams so that we have no pollution on this planet. And we can solve the problems of the people that are urgent and potential, and the other animals and the other cultures on Earth and in space. And we can end the arms race without dislocating the industry jobs, without disrupting the economy, by transforming, Wernher von Braun told me, the war industry into a global cooperative space industry that will provide, he said, finally, more jobs and profits on this planet than during any hot or cold wartime, more products and services that can be applied directly to solving the problems of this planet. And we can have a whole planet now that lives in peace on Earth, with all the cultures on Earth and with all the extraterrestrial cultures in space. And these are words that Wernher von Braun told me in 1974, and I will testify before the Congress under oath about everything I have said and more.
To a UFO expert, Paul Roberts, who runs Hegel Paranormal Intelligence here in Sacramento, says he too has been getting lots of reports. He says UFOs are usually attracted to military, nuclear bases, or gold, which is what makes this UFO sighting abnormal.
So why now only tells me one thing. Either there's something here in Sacramento that they're interested in and that we don't know about.
Residents of the Astrakhan region witnessed an unusual glow of light in the night sky on Friday. A bright round object with a spiral of light behind it hovered in the sky for nearly 30 minutes. The Astrakhan region emergency services received over 50 calls about the incident. Official data of the nature of the object is not yet available.
if aliens ever show up here on Earth, little green men might be the least of our problems. A new study indicates that instead they'll probably be more like super intelligent dinosaurs, as smart and as cunning as humans. As one scientist put it, we would be better off not meeting them. Sleep tight.
The reptilian society is very structured, and there is a hierarchy where we have the elite group, which is the white-winged reptilians. They're very tall, actually have icy blue eyes, and very sleek but powerful bodies. And then it works down all the way, 7 levels in at least the Draco Empire, to a workforce or drone-like reptilians, which are quite small, perhaps 3 to 4 feet high, very brown, scaly skin, not very intelligent, basically do what they are told. In between, you have a military class, you have a spiritual or religious leaders that are very much like we would have bishops and cardinals and popes. They also have an intellectual caste, and then a general mass of people. For all intents and purposes, if you really wanted to know what the Draco Empire hierarchy was like, just look at the Hindu caste system, which was based on that. If you read about Hindu legend and even anything in East Asia, it talks about the Naga, which were the 7-headed reptilians, which came ashore in Asia after their continent sank in the Pacific, and is spoken about in all of the Southern Asian and East Asian legends and histories. The 7-headed reptilian, or Naga, really represents the 7 levels of the caste system in the Draco Empire hierarchy. The first time I ever had contact with reptilian beings was when I was working as a teenager, believe it or not, in the Montauk Project between 1970 and 1983. They were what I would consider to be of the military or warrior class, very large, powerful, mean-looking, scary-looking. When you're 13, 14 years old and you see an 8 or 9 foot tall creature with fangs and green and yellow eyes coming at you, it's very scary. They were kind of there as observers, along with observers from the U.S. government, the Israelis, the Russians, Germans, and even British. They were there to watch and exchange information on the programming techniques and the technology that the U.S. government had developed from other alien technologies, as well as what they had discovered from Atlantean.
Reptilians are an ancient race. They were actually a hybrid mix many billions of years ago, which came into a foundation of us not really understanding who and what they are. We still don't really understand the total mixing, but we believe that there's a centering of space that brings them through those who come from another outside energy connected to parallel worlds. They didn't come from this world, certainly, and they didn't come from the 15th, which is the opposite end of the spectrum to us. They came from outside. They came from a world before time, and they were mixed with some of our own species. We can't deny them as human beings because they also have light orbs as we do, but they have unfortunately taken a lot of our stolen gold and created a set of hybrid human beings that seem to be very responsible for a lot of the downfall of our worlds and a downfall of quite a lot of the worlds of our friends. They've not only taken over our planet, which we like to know as Ki, as opposed to Earth, because in the higher worlds we know it as Ki. This is a representation of the energy that the Earth brings to us. They have also savagely harmed spaces outside these worlds, and some of our very dear friends today, such as the Arturians, the Ashtari, also the Andromedarians, also those from the Pleiades, plus numerous other cultures that also belong to a species of humanoid. These species have also been very degraded and very, very pulled down by a long-term reptilian rule. We are on the space now of actually emerging into a new world. Reptilians are falling back. Most of their original species, as in those who are still in full reptilian body, no longer exist. We have been working endlessly for many centuries to remove this, and we are hoping that one of their major centres, that seems to be where they all accumulated in the 16th and 1700s, being a landmass of mountains known as the Alps, particularly in a space that we know today as Switzerland, seems to have gravitated in a huge number of this species. I can't say that all Swiss are reptilian. I can only say that quite a lot of their orbital structures show reptilian space. These reptilian spaces are not really what we need to have in our environment. We cannot point a finger at someone and say we don't like you, but I think we know that there are a certain kind of human that is not very loving, not very honest, not very kind, not very generous, and will probably do anything in his power of ego to take over anyone else, particularly those of the more gentler species. I think on this present day, where we are in our year 2014, from the Gregorian calendar, it's very difficult indeed to say who are we, what are we, and where have we come from. I think the only point is to say that when these reptilians of full reptilian format actually leave the planet this time, they will not come back in orbital structures. They are not going to be harmed in this life. They won't even know if they are reptilian or not reptilian. But when they take themselves to the higher worlds, as in when they close their eyes finally and die, as in they leave the life source of the body behind, because as you know, no one ever dies. We only return to our orbital structures, and we then move forward to the higher worlds, and the higher worlds play. When these of full reptilian body actually leave the planet this time, they will return to nowhere, because there is no structure that will allow them presence, and there is no space where they can actually rejuvenate. So as from the 25th of March 2014, I would like to say that we are extraordinarily hopeful that we will eventually close the door on what has been taking place amongst our worlds for billions upon billions upon billions of years, which in fact only took a total governorship of our worlds around the 1930s, 1940s, when the experiment of how many reptilians could actually be squeezed into mountain regions actually took place. Many reptilians have been on our planet for many thousands of years. They have been very much governed by those who prefer to rule by using warfare, as opposed to those who would rather form a governorship of hearts who belong to servitude for the people. I think we're all very aware these days that our governments don't really serve us, but they are serving someone else. And I think that's somebody else who seems to really enjoy taking our gold out of our bank vaults. I do believe that this gold is sent on ships, as in spaceships, to the higher worlds. And I do believe that this gold is then handed over to reptilian species who actually then recreate light orbs to be quite a devastating space that are then brought down into our communities as human beings. Sadly, this has been going on for a long time, and sadly, we have no way of telling totally who is who and what is what. The only thing I can say is, I don't think they can move any more of these light orbs into our space. I don't believe when they leave our space they can rejuvenate anywhere, and I do believe that we have some exceptionally amazing brothers of other species, as in our dear Arcturian brothers, who do have quite a few spaceships on the dark side of the moon. I also believe that there is a ship that the American government has talked about as being a comet. I don't think it's a comet, I think it's an Arcturian warship, and I think they are surveying us and hoping us the best of luck with our removal of reptilians. They have also undergone a shocking experience with their own islands, islands being their own planets. We wish them love, hope and harmony, as we wish every species who desires reptilian-free governorship in hope and the presence of bringing a peaceful world into harmony for all times. Thank you.
¿Cómo quiere que el mundo recuerde a Hugo Chávez?
Dos palabras, dos que son un hombre. Un hombre, lo que soy, eso sí, hombre humano, pues. Hombre humano, porque hay seres humanos que no tienen forma humana, pero no son. Yo soy un humano.
Estamos ayudando a crear una raza híbrida. Es una raza destinada a la extinción, a menos que nosotros los ayudemos.
Como prueba de que lo que está viviendo es auténtico, tiene videos y fotografías de las naves que la abducen. Los videos son impresionantes. Son nocturnos tomados con su celular, donde se aprecia un disco volador desplazándose en un plano diagonal, con fuerte luz interior y que no se asemeja a nada parecido de la Tierra. Por otro lado, las fotografías son muy claras, bien definidas, con puntos de referencia o acercamientos donde se aprecia que se trata de discos voladores. Para finalizar, pudo fotografiar a uno de estos raptores. Tiene exámenes radiológicos donde presenta pruebas de implantes que tiene en el cerebro. Se determinó que era un objeto sin poderse calificar.
No tengo ninguna cicatriz donde se aprecie por dónde entró el objeto.
La mandaron a hacerse exámenes y el doctor encontró un ritmo cardíaco parecido a un bebé, pero no se veía el bebé. A Giovanna le fue practicado un aborto en su casa al tener complicaciones con el feto, y lo que encontró el médico fue algo espantoso, un híbrido entre humano y otra raza. Se grabó todo el proceso, las imágenes son fuertes. Se encontró una especie de placenta donde dentro se encontraba el producto, con características humanas. Se observan dos extremidades superiores y dos inferiores, el torso, pero la cara parece más a la raza que la está abduciendo.
Un aborto, con una malformación. Era un monstruo.
50% of all Americans believe the extraterrestrial explanation accounts for these sightings. Up to as many as 90% of Americans believe the government is outright lying. The polls are unambiguous. Year after year, the same thing. In fact, if you could talk anonymously to people, even in Congress, probably 50% of members of Congress already convinced that the extraterrestrial presence explains this phenomena. Disclosure is at hand. It is very close, and the American people need to prepare themselves very soon for an announcement from our government that there is, in fact, an extraterrestrial presence engaging this planet and the human race.
As UFO videographers and investigators around the world continue to document that strange, unidentified craft are navigating in our skies, as well as in outer space, the mass public and even former U.S. presidents appear convinced that UFOs are real. Is it an above-top secret truth that extraterrestrials are observing us from their technologically advanced spaceships?
It's not like any aircraft I've ever seen. Doesn't behave like balloons, didn't look like a blimp. What was it?
It was just weird. The second you see it, you look at it and go, that's not an aircraft. What is that?
While many people still believe that a flying saucer from beyond Earth crashed near Roswell, New Mexico in 1947, the United States Air Force still officially denies it with what they call their final report. In it, they conclude there was no UFO crash, and every eyewitness account of an alien body was actually a crash test dummy used in high-altitude parachute drops.
I don't think the Americans should believe anything that our government says about Roswell. How could we? They denied that it existed for so long, then it was a weather balloon, now it's a super-secret weather balloon. Who knows what it'll be next week?
It is no coincidence that some of the past American commander-in-chiefs seem very interested in UFOs. Before he was president, Jimmy Carter witnessed the flight of a UFO and even reported it to authorities. Subsequent presidents also expressed their concern about visitors from outer space.
I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world.
Interestingly, after he left the White House, Ronald Reagan confirmed he saw what he believed was an alien craft when he was governor of California from his plane and asked his pilot to follow it until it shot off into space. And when Bill Clinton was president, he publicly stated, quote, "As far as I know, an alien spacecraft did not crash in Roswell, New Mexico in 1947. If the U.S. Air Force did recover any alien bodies, they didn't tell me about it either, and I want to know." In the 2008 U.S. presidential election, some candidates seemed very open to the possibility that UFOs exist, and one came forward with his own tale of a close encounter. As our current exploration of Mars continues with NASA rovers, perhaps one day NASA cameras will roll up to this ever-controversial structure known as the face on Mars, which many believe was created by an advanced ET civilization. Maybe when the mystery of this monument and nearby pyramid structures is solved, we will be closer to proving that alien life does in fact exist, even on planets so close to ours. But those who've chronicled the UFO evidence most to date think the ultimate proof will come from everyday people pointing cameras to the sky.
We, the people, are going to prove that this is truth. Not the scientists, not the authorities, not the military. We, hundreds or thousands of people with our cameras in our hands, are going to be able to produce the evidence that is going to be seen around the world and is going to prove that this is real.
Fala, filho da puta! Calma aí, maluco. Porra, vai machucar o bicho, cara. Aí, não falei que ele ia falar, ó.
Main types: alien type 1, the grays. Of this type there are several subtypes. All tend to appear grayish in color and for this reason are referred to as grays. Gray type of this is the type most commonly referred to as the grays, also known as Zeta Reticuli from the Zeta Reticulum star system, the Bernard star neighboring the Orion area. They function in a mode that is apparently military in nature with a rigidly defined social structure that holds science and conquering worlds to be the prime movers. They are normally about 4.5 feet tall with large heads and black, wraparound eyes. They have limited facial features, slit mouth and no nose to speak of. There seem to be two main social classes. One is the more hawkish and is more abrupt, crude and blunt. The more dove-like ones are more refined and capable of a more business-like behavior towards humans, and prefer to use more diplomatic behavior to gain control over humans. This type of gray is what I believe is being referred to as the orange class of grays. They seem to be emotionless by human standards and therefore are seen as cruel in their treatment of human beings. They are able to take human lives without any regard for that individual. They apparently can use certain substances of the human body for their sustenance and therefore appear to be carnivorous in regards to humans. I also read that they extract fluid from some part of the human brain during intense emotional response fear and are able to use it like a recreational drug. It is my understanding that these greys are actually servants to a master race of reptilian-type aliens and are trying to prepare the Earth for their arrival by gaining control over the Earth through many means. They tend to enjoy the feeling of freedom they have on Earth, away from their masters, and would desire the help of humans in confrontations with the reptilians. Which appears to be a consideration for the near future mid-90s. These greys have their best known bases in New Mexico and Nevada, but are also known to have bases in many countries of the world. Grey type B tall greys from Orion, usually about 7 to 8 feet tall. Reports often exaggerate their height as being 9 to 12 feet, with facial features somewhat similar to grey type A with the exception of the large nose found on type B greys. These greys also have technologies that allow them to perform certain actions that appear miraculous. These greys are less viscous towards humans than type A greys but are still considered hostile. They tend to influence more through political controls and negotiated agreements with those in power. Their main bases seem to be in the Aleutian Islands. These are the type seen not long ago in eastern Russia. Grey type C. These are the shortest of the greys and tend to be about 3.5 feet tall. Their facial features are very similar to the Zeta Reticuli greys and are of the same root race. They are just as hostile to humans as the Zetas. They are from a star system near the shoulder of Orion called Bellatrix. Alien type to the reptilians, a genetics akin to reptiles. These are highly advanced entities but viewed as being of a negative, hostile or dangerous disposition since they regard humans as a totally inferior race. They would perceive us much the way we would perceive a herd of cattle. They are carnivorous in regard to humans. There is supposedly a driven planetoid or asteroid inhabited by 30 million of these lizard folk that is to enter our solar system in the mid-90s if the present schedule is kept. They consider Earth to be their own ancient outpost and would expect to have complete control of the entire planet upon their return. Their own planet is becoming unable to adequately support life and they need somewhere else to live. These are the aliens who are served by the type A greys. Alien type 3 human type aliens. Human type. These are of a genetic base similar to humans of Earth. They appear of normal height 5-6 foot and tend to be fair-skinned with blonde hair. These entities have been abducted by the greys or are the offspring of abductees and have been trained by the greys as servants. These entities are totally subservient to the greys. Human type B. These are aliens of similar genetics to Earth humans and also, it seems, of the humans that serve the greys. During some abduction projects, twins either identical or fraternal are induced in a female subject. During the first trimester, one of the fetuses is removed. It is then grown to maturity by group A. Abductees will meet their twins during some abductions. Very limited contact has been made by these humans. Group C. Genetically modified Earth-born humans. These humans are comprised of two classes and should not be confused with Group D greys. Class W workers. This class is the smallest in physical stature. They are described as approximately 3.5 feet in height, large head and eyes, pale white in complexion. These workers were created by Group A through genetic modification of Earth human fetuses. Their function is to perform menial tasks requiring limited reasoning abilities. In mental capacity, they are equivalent to a 5-year-old child. Class T technicians. These humans are basically the same as Class W. They are slightly larger, at approximately 4.5 feet in height. Their complexion is tan or yellowish. Their reasoning and deductive abilities are higher. This allows them to perform more complex operations. They are often seen operating ship controls and in transport activities. Both classes W and T are telepathically camouflaged to appear as greys to abductees. This is done to conceal the true nature of Group C. It is felt that perception of Group A maintaining a human slave population would hinder future contact efforts. This point will undoubtedly be a source of much heated debate in the near future. Group D greys. Of the 6 groups discussed in this paper, the greys appear to represent the only non-human contingent. The following data should be considered tentative at best. Height is approximately 5.5 feet. The head is large, eyes large, black and very slanted. Skin color is dark gray and non-porous. All data so far indicates that they may be a cetacean-based life form. On Earth, this comprises the species of whales and dolphins. Descriptions of gray skin color and texture closely match that of dolphins. The stare and stun effects approximate that performed by dolphins on potential enemies, such as sharks and barracuda. Human and dolphin fetuses are nearly identical, up to a certain development stage. Group E human/grey.
So here's some Swiss money. Here you got the DNA helix on it. The old 10 francs shows the Nibiru system. There are some good videos about it on the internet, on YouTube. But I wanted to show you this here. Here's the octagon pillars, as I just showed you on the video. There they are, 8 pieces. That has a meaning. This is octagon. And here it shows a grey. Some aliens, look at it. The Swiss reptilians. I mean, these are no humans, look at it. These are Swiss reptilians, the Nazis, who financed Adolf Hitler, gave Red Cross passes to the worst mass murderers you can imagine. There, it's a grey. It even is grey. Okay, this is, and they are standing in the octagon. Look at it. So this is Switzerland, the home of the Nazis and the center of hatred against humanity.
Oh, okay. I don't believe you.
Now, it's shot at an iPhone looking through the eyepiece of a telescope, so it's kind of hard to see, so we blew it up.
I don't know if you can see that, but there's something orbiting that planet over there.
Elijah shot the video on December 20th around 5:05 p.m. in Sacramento.
I saw something that I'd never seen before. I saw another object orbiting this, you know, whatever it was up there. And I've never seen anything like that before.
He thought it was a little strange, so he put his phone down, called his nephew, picked up the phone, and shot this second video.
Oh my God, it blew up. What the? Something just blew.
Once again, it's his camera phone shot through a telescope lens, so we zoomed in and we slowed it down.
As soon as I put the camera to the telescope, it just blew up. And I didn't know what to say.
I don't blame him. It certainly looks suspiciously like an explosion.
So I sent the video off to Dr. Stephen Moran. He's the guy that wrote Astrophysics for Dummies. He said, Cody, I don't recognize the explosion as an astronomical phenomenon. I'm not sure what that means.
Well, whatever it was almost never seen by Elijah or anybody else. Not because it's a tiny speck in a big old empty sky, but because of Craigslist.
You almost got rid of that like what, a week before?
Almost got rid of it a week before. I was trying to sell it on Craigslist, and I was getting offers. And man, you know what? At this time, you know, I'm glad I didn't sell it.
Aliens. Cody said he contacted a Vatican expert about the explosion and was told it could be some sort of light refraction.
Could be. Who knows?
Or aliens.
Or aliens, yeah, that's a possibility.
Okay, we've never seen pictures like this before from NASA. Amazing video of what looks like tornadoes on the sun.
Signs in the heavens and the earth.
And what we're seeing is that these events continue, one after another.
There's been a lot of buzz over the last few weeks about strange sounds being heard in the atmosphere. People around the world and here at home have reported hearing some bizarre noises.
Some strange noises heard around the world the last few weeks, from Arizona to England and right next door in Manitoba, all showing folks alarmed by what sounds like a noise straight out of a science fiction flick.
Watching a scary movie. The background noise gives you the feeling that something terrible is about to happen.
Strange mild sound. Seems like it's coming from the sky anyway.
I've heard that Jesus is coming back. I've heard that it's 2012, the world is ending.
This phenomenon stretched beyond North Battleford. Similar experiences were reported in Saskatoon, northern Saskatchewan, and parts of the U.S., even in Europe.
Sonidos muy similares a estos.
I've never seen this before. Are you doing video?
I have never seen this before, and I'm doing video. That's
correct. Can we please send it to Jake Spain and the Weather Channel?
That we are in the birth bank. Something is going on. We are in unprecedented, uncharted waters.
ومصدرها وتحديد نوعيتها وبيبين صادر لاحقا عن الوزير المصدر مجرور مقفل ويرجح أن يكون
A terrible mystery gripping the world right now. Birds, fish, and all kinds of creatures just dropping dead.
For the second year on New Year's Eve, birds are falling from the sky in Beebe.
A mystery in Beebe, Arkansas. Birds falling dead from the sky on New Year's Eve for the second year in a row. Wildlife officials say
no one knows how these dolphins died, but hundreds have been found on beaches in Chiclayo, Peru. At least 260 dolphins washed ashore across a roughly 60-mile stretch of beach. Officials aren't sure what happened to them. An event like this is particularly unusual because dolphins aren't normally found in these seas.
everywhere you look, you see the carcass of a dead turtle. Small turtles, large turtles, dozens of them, dead and scattered along the banks of Smith Lake.
The birds just started falling from the sky.
This is really weird. Hundreds of birds literally just dropped from the sky and then landed on I-95, bringing traffic there to a crawl.
But earlier today, a lot of confusion and concern when birds which were flying in the sky started to crash to the pavement.
There were hundreds of them.
Never ever in my life have I seen anything like this. Crazy. Totally crazy.
Never seen. I travel this all the time.
But I haven't heard of anything locally like that, ever.
Birds, fish, and all kinds of creatures just dropping dead.
Couldn't figure out what the heck happened. Never seen anything like it.
Something strange has happened in the skies above Britain. Police throughout Scotland and the north of England received calls of a bright light streaking across the sky on Saturday night.
These images over Harrogate, but there have been sightings across the country from Scotland, Wales, the north, right down to the East Midlands.
It was what observers are calling one of the best meteors ever seen in the UK.
The object was seen as far south as Devon and may have landed in the English Channel.
Dozens of viewers have said they've seen a massive bright light in the sky in the last few hours, with most claiming it was a meteor.
You'll be hearing a lot about this next item over the next 11 months, but astronomers have identified a new asteroid about 150 feet across, which is headed our way and may come so close to Earth that it will pass between us and the satellites orbiting in space above us. There's some debate in the scientific community about whether a direct hit is even possible. This is called 2012 DA-14. They say this will be the closest pass of an asteroid in the history of tracking such things. And again, while this pass is supposed to miss us, the experts all say there's nothing wrong with making sure your affairs are in order.
So should we be nervous about this whole thing?
Well, this is a serious story because the latest round of solar flares captured in this incredible video. Take a look at this. It's from NASA overnight. The burst that you're seeing there, charged particles erupting off the surface of the sun. And we saw an even bigger solar flare Tuesday night. Right now, all of those particles are racing toward the Earth, as you said, about 4 million miles per hour. And it's growing as it gets closer to us. On top of that, the problems will arise when the flares reach the Earth's magnetic field, apparently. That's when we could see mass power.
It's like a cloud of birds, but a giant cloud.
It's really creepy. It's kind of like, is the world coming to an end here or something? I mean, it's scary.
The whole sky will fill up with black birds.
But it's crazy. It's scary, ain't it?
How many do you think?
Like a million.
It's like we're being held hostage.
Held hostage in maybe a 3-mile radius by blackbirds.
When it comes down, it sounds like rain coming down. I mean, literally, from inside of our apartment, you think that it's raining outside.
What a sight this is. Thousands of dolphins swarm a whale watching boat off the coast of Orange County.
You're looking at hundreds upon hundreds of dolphins breaching out of the water. The unusual spectacle was caught on tape.
Trying to figure out what caused that flash in the sky in the Northwest Valley. It happened this morning, right here. If you haven't seen it, here we go. During Andrea's traffic report, look, we're going to slow it down for you right there. Look in the background. Looks like some kind of very bright light, almost like it was an explosion or something. Our first thought was maybe a transformer. But we checked with APS and SRP. They said they haven't had any trouble. We haven't had any reports of any explosions either. Here it is, one more time for you in slow-mo. So it is still a mystery.
Here it comes. Okay, release easily.
Take it away from us, Lord. Take it, Lord. Take it, Lord. Take it away from us, Jesus. Holy Father God, all powers in your Son's name. Take this up away from our home.
And those storms are not over just yet. Cities torn apart after taking a direct hit from rare winter tornadoes. They're now bracing for more of the same.
Among the places hardest hit, Harrisburg, Illinois. 175-mile-an-hour winds, 2 football fields wide, left people dead. Homes were shredded, a strip mall flattened, entire buildings knocked off their foundations.
It's just unreal. It's like a war zone.
A somber Saturday morning as hundreds of thousands wake up to sheer devastation. This entire town's all gone, flattened in a flash. This massive storm spawned more tornadoes in one day than we usually see in an entire month.
Here's what we know right now. At least 29 people dead. This is the second round of killer tornadoes just this week.
95 tornadoes ripped through yesterday. If those are all confirmed reports, this would be the greatest tornado day, one-day event in March for all history.
it was almost never seen by Elijah or anybody else. Not because it's a tiny speck in a big old empty sky, but because of Craigslist.
You almost got rid of that like what, a week before?
Almost got rid of it a week before. I was trying to sell it on Craigslist, and I was getting offers. And man, you know what? At this time, you know, I'm glad I didn't sell it.
Aliens. Cody said he contacted a Vatican expert about the explosion and was told it could be some sort of light refraction.
Could be. Who knows?
Or aliens.
Or aliens, yeah, that's a possibility.
33 News Morning Edition. The time is 6:26. Okay, so you know how we ask you to send in your pics so we can put them in our newscast? Well, you've got to see what one viewer claims his friend found at a hunting camp in Berwick. I really don't even know what that is. The guy who sent it in didn't want us to mention his name, but tells us this is totally for real. He says last weekend his friend's family found one of their hunting camps destroyed, but the SIM card was still there, and so was this crazy image. I put the pic up on Facebook, and this is what some of you had to say about it. Steven says, keep going down, this is a computer-generated Photoshop image, and it's definitely not real. Okay, the next guy says, bring it up, those swamp people need to eat some food with those 2-inch biceps, okay. And our next person says, hey, I've got one that my friend snapped up here in North Louisiana with the same cam. Stance alien girl-looking thing floating in the background. So here's that pic. Okay, really creepy, isn't it? And we got the music to go along with it. Breathe.
Ya, güey. Ya, güey. ¿Te quedas aquí? ¡Valoran, ya no! Ya, güey. No, yo voy por él. ¡Ay, no mames, güey! ¡Ya vieron! ¡No mames, güey! ¡Ya vieron! ¡No mames, güey! ¡Ya vieron! Yo voy por él. वो जगह से आगे नहीं आ रहा है वो जगह से आगे नहीं हो रहा फोटो लेके वीडियो है वीडियो दे वो रॉकेट में पीछे आग लगी है रॉकेट में आग लगी है वो क्या है आसमान में अजूबा वो क्या है आसमान में अजूबा क्या जूम करके आदमी का फोटो ले रहे हैं क्या जूम करके आदमी का फोटो ले
Ever wonder what might lie out there deep in space? Do you want to believe we're not alone, that somewhere in the universe intelligent life may actually exist?
Our next guest says there is life out there. It does exist. Dr. Charles Hall says he spent 2 years working with extraterrestrial beings during his time with the American military. He claims the US military has actually been in contact with alien species for years. And Dr. Charles Hall is here to explain, along with his wife Marie, live from what Bugs Bunny used to call Albuquerque, New Mexico. Now, thank you both for your time. Terrific to have you with us. Firstly, Charles, can you tell us your story of how you managed to come into contact with these beings as you worked with the military?
I'm a Vietnam veteran, and I enlisted in the Air Force in July 1964, and I was trained as a weather observer. And I was sent to Nellis Air Force Base, Nevada, outside Las Vegas, Nevada. And for 2.5 years, I was sent up to the gunnery ranges up at Indian Springs, and I was given a clearance to allow me to go anywhere in Dreamland as long as I was alone. I discovered that up there at the north end of Indian Springs Valley, which you can see on the map in the state of Nevada here in America, that there was a base which the U.S. Air Force maintained for a group of extraterrestrials who were tall and white. And I, as the duty weather observer, was allowed to go up there, or they were allowed to come down to where I was. And the interaction took place over more than 2 years.
Wow.
During those 2 years, I also came across, I also interacted to a lesser extent with the Roswell Greys, and I've also personally talked with the extraterrestrials that I call the Norwegians with 24 teeth, who come here from a very nearby star, perhaps Bernard star. And my experiences, my presentations, my books are unique because I'm the only person that I know of that was allowed to interact with the extraterrestrials, the tall whites, for more than 2 years.
So 3 different species of aliens you're talking about there, Charles?
Yeah, can you describe what they look like, what they were like?
Well, I'll start with the tall whites. They're thinner than we are, and they're very frail. Throughout most of their life, they are the same height as I am, 5'11", but they live 10 times longer than humans. They live 600 or 800 years.
Wow.
But they don't age the way we do. When they get to be equivalent to a human of about 40 years, that means when they're about 400 years, they start growing again instead of aging as humans.
Right.
And then they go, and this continues, and so that by the time they get to be 600 or 800 years old, they're very tall, 8.5, 9, or 10 feet tall. But this is not necessarily good because their skeleton grows more than their internal organs. And so there comes a time after 600 or 800 years when their skeleton, their body is tall, but their organs can't support it,
the organism.
which time they die a natural death, because they're just flesh and blood creatures like we are. If they injure themselves, it takes them 10 times longer to heal up than a human.
Yeah.
So there's a trade-off.
Yeah, right. They still look fresh as a daisy when they go, though. They look like Tilda Swinton. Hey, just quickly, you had them there. You were working with the aliens on any particular project, or was the military working with the aliens on a particular project? Was there, I don't know, technology sharing or, you know, botanical cross-fertilization?
The U.S. Air Force, and I'm speaking of the mid-1960s, was willing to give them anything they asked for. When I first met them, I was very afraid of them, and every human I met when you come across them out in the desert was naturally very afraid of them, and they were even more afraid of us. It's like running into a gorilla in the wild where the gorilla is on his home ground. So they had to go through a process of becoming used to being around humans before they could take part in the technology transfer program. I, as the weather observer, was the test human. As an enlisted man, I was expendable, you know.
Sure.
I was the one they send out to.
Where's the weather guy?
What the big picture is here, which we haven't actually talked about between us, is extraterrestrial involvement.
You've got to be very careful about that. Oh, just put the question bluntly, you know, most people, all the alternative media and a lot of people now, I mean, just look, go back to the 50s, right? If you ask the ordinary man in the street in Walthamstow in England whether he believes in aliens, he'd laugh his head off and go and get some pie and mash. If you ask him today, he may well say, yeah, there has got to be something, because he's educated, knows that that's vast the universe.
And he's being conditioned by Hollywood movies and television series. Which is all part of what I mean, we are being prepared to come to terms with this.
But not for the reasons you think.
For what reasons?
They're going to have nothing to do with us. They're there. If you, all right,
the ETs are going to have...
Let's call a spade a spade. Yeah, they exist. There is no conjecture. They do. Yeah, there is stuff, but you know what? That's no big surprise to 50% of people, shall we say?
Right.
But that number's gone up, hasn't it? You know,
Yeah.
more and more people realise. You know, more important. You know, NASA have got more and more slapdash about, and cannot because of the very thing they've created, the media monster behind trying to get money for the space race.
Yes.
Is still there from the 60s.
Yes.
And people, there is a lot of people that are very interested in it. And so because of that, cameras are on the shuttle. And because of the internet and various people that are clever with the internet, Mr. McKinnon and people like that, who I know very well.
Did you know Gary McKinnon?
I'll tell you a story about him later on.
Off record? Yeah. That's a shame. Okay. All right. We're talking about cameras on the shuttle and people who are clever with computers.
What I'm trying to say is you can't, there's so many now.
Yes.
You can't keep your lid on everything.
You're saying it's impossible to hide the reality.
And there's a certain piece of video that is quite prevalent on the internet of a circular thing rolling behind a tether.
Yes, I know that one.
That's factual.
Yes.
A couple of miles across, but it's not a ship, and things aren't what you think they are out there. You should regard space more as an ocean.
Okay.
Yeah. We've got no right to turn around and say intelligent or unintelligent, you know, because then what you're doing, you're comparing things to your intellect, aren't you?
Okay.
And how can you compare that to a human?
Are you stating this as a fact?
Absolutely.
A fact. And what you're talking about here is you're talking about large living beings, like big kind of...
And small.
And small living beings.
Look at it this way, if you've got a shark swimming through the ocean, he's got fish swimming all around him most of the time, picking up morsels, servicing him, and he doesn't eat them. They go right in his mouth.
Yes, yes, yes.
And come out. You know, that's a natural thing, yeah?
Yeah.
Is it so far-fetched for you to understand that that could be the situation out there?
Okay. But at the same time, there are some what we could regard as metallic craft, things that you could call spacecraft.
Right.
As well.
Yeah.
Right.
But tell you what, I've got an axe to grind here, so let me grind my axe. Right?
You do that.
Okay, so here you are, you're an alien, yeah, you're on the other side of the universe, right, for instance, yeah, you're in Orion, yeah, you're that far away, yeah, you're in your ship and you're flying all the way here, and you cross intergalactic space in a fantastic piece of machinery, yeah, and then you crash in Nevada.
Right.
Rubbish!
Okay.
Rubbish! You're shot down.
Okay.
That's what happened to you.
Yes.
Because you didn't think that there was any kind of particle weapon or kinetic weapon that could do that.
Yes.
Well, you wasn't prepared because it was the first time you came.
Yes. That was, it got something to do with radar, wasn't it? They discovered that radar would actually do this.
Yeah.
Am I right?
Well, it was quite an aggressive... It wasn't an accident.
Okay. I've got you. So you're saying that the so-called crashes weren't crashes, they're actually offensive actions which were discovered...
And I ask you to understand that because you don't cross intergalactic space and then crash in Nevada, do you?
I understand that.
You see, that's my axe there, so sorry, go on.
I've got you, that's fine. So you're saying that initially there was a way of bringing the craft down that was discovered by accident, and then it was, more or less, and then it was fairly quickly...
It was a deliberate attempt.
Utilised.
Amazing that it worked.
Yes, right.
And then when it did, so
it's a lucky hit, and then they started to get focused about it.
Yeah, well, they realised that it could be done, and then went down the avenue of trying to figure out how they done it and what actually did cause it, and they needed to look at the thing they brought down to do that.
Yes, and then
they educated them, so they became much better at it.
Yes, because then you got the Americans mainly, I guess. Was it only the Americans? Did this happen in every country?
No, let's drop the borders and the nationalities.
Okay. So then you got people who are pretty smart, who got their hands on this ET technology, and that was never part of the setup. That was never part of the plan, was it? It was never part of the plan.
No.
Okay. And what kind of problems has that caused?
Well, you know what we're like. It's not caused... They want to go. We're going to be the visitors.
So that's what the selection's about. Okay, it's about creating a sort of space crew or a
and remember,
new...
this is second-hand, so...
I understand that. A new breed of humanity who will be well equipped to go off into the cosmos like the Crusaders.
Yeah. Yeah, like the Crusaders.
Like the Crusaders. And it's like So it's like you've got the spirit of the Crusaders and you give them extraterrestrial technology to move with.
There you go.
And then...
And are any of us in any doubt that we're going to start planet hopping within the next century?
Mhm.
Are you actually in any doubt with the technologies available now? Because we're doing it with robots.
Personally, I'm in no doubt at all that we've got a Mars base.
Oh, right, okay.
but are closer than an all-time high. NASA has sat around and lied to us about how close this stuff is, and its all-time great highs of watching all these images like this here and this, and we're going to get even a little bit better, I think, and probably you might have already seen some real good stuff through what I've already showed you because I blow these up. I blew these up as much as I could when I'm on a regular screen. I think you can get it to 200%. Okay? So you're seeing planets and so forth, and what you actually see when you go to my site, and there's way more than one out there, ladies and gentlemen, because tons of stuff in space is triangulation. There you go. That is Blink 229, Lumi 229, CL 101-229. NASA has all kinds of goddamn numbers to mess everybody up in what something is in space. Okay? This is actual footage that I did not steal from NASA, but a former employee got it out. Enemy to the United States of America? Quite possibly he was. But it's still factual data that the government's not going to show you. Okay? Now there is way more than one of these out there. I.e., we have this.
Welcome back, everybody. We've just received new video of the Israeli Air Force strike Peter Ducey mentioned earlier in our show. The Air Force struck down an unmanned aircraft flying over their airspace. Now, officials are saying they are still trying to figure out where the drone came from.
A part of that plan, of course, is to induce the gradual surrender of American sovereignty, piece by piece and step by step, to various international organizations, of which the United Nations is the outstanding but far from the only example. Now, here are the aims for the United States. 1, greatly expanded government spending for every conceivable means of getting rid of ever larger sums of American money as wastefully as possible. 2, higher and then much higher taxes. 3, an increasingly unbalanced budget despite the higher taxes. 4, wild inflation of our currency. 5, government controls of prices, wages, and materials, supposedly to combat inflation. 6, greatly increased socialistic controls over every operation of our economy and every activity of our daily lives. This is to be accompanied, naturally and automatically, by a correspondingly huge increase in the size of our bureaucracy and in both the cost and reach of our domestic government. 7, far more centralization of power in Washington and the practical elimination of our state lines. There is a many-faceted drive at work to have our state lines eventually mean no more within the nation than our county lines do now within the states. 8, the steady advance of federal aid to and control over our educational system, leading to complete federalization of our public education. 9, a constant hammering into the American consciousness of the horror of modern warfare, the beauties and the absolute necessity of peace, peace always on communist terms, of course. And 10, the consequent willingness of the American people to allow the steps of appeasement by our government which amount to a piecemeal surrender of the rest of the free world and of the United States itself. So brush the insider's dust out of your eyes, my friends, and the communist soap suds out of your brain, and ask yourselves in all honesty, what on earth is wrong with the United States simply minding its own business? Or with having its foreign policy function primarily for the safety and benefit of the American people. Which is exactly what we had done for the first 140 years of our existence as a nation, to the incredible advantage of ourselves and everybody else. Everybody, that is, except a numerically small clique of power-lusting conspirators who had somehow inflicted themselves on a gullible world. While we turn to a very brief summarization of what we hope the John Birch Society will help and even sometimes lead the American people to accomplish during the next 15 years. One, our first and most important specific undertaking should be to restore the complete independence of the United States. This includes our resolution to get us out of the United Nations and get the United Nations out of the United States. Two, we must once again make our money freely redeemable in gold at some realistic price. And we must take all practicable legislative steps to prevent a recurrence of the enormous thievery and other subversive crimes that have been perpetrated on the American people through a contrived inflation by every president from Franklin Roosevelt through Richard Nixon. Three, we should reduce the number of government bureaus, of government civilian employees, and the whole quantity of government by at least 50%. And we should achieve at least this much reduction in proper fashion through gradually convincing a majority of the American people of the wisdom of such a course. Four, we should withdraw all American troops from every spot on earth that is not American soil, except when and where such troops may be required as decided by Congress to protect American lives and property from criminal vandalism. Five, we should get government out of the areas and functions and activities where government does not belong. Again, all steps to this end should be taken gradually, but nevertheless just as rapidly as enough of the American people can be persuaded to support such progress. Any such achievement will require a truly massive educational force, but that's exactly what we hope to build during the next 15 years. We could go ahead for at least 100 numbered items, but the John Birch Society will undoubtedly be working on more than that many specific projects, which will be laid out in its bulletins before another 180 months will have rolled around. And all of these projects will fit into the general pattern indicated by the 5 major objectives listed above. So let's really wind up this marathon monologue with one final thought. None of us can guarantee anything about what the future will bring. Your speaker knows what a job we have before us to rid our country of the scourge of communism within the next few years, and then to go ahead on our constructive program so well that 15 years from now we shall already be entering an era of far less government, of a much sounder sense of responsibility, and, with God's help, of a better world. But I sincerely believe that it can be done, and this much I know. If every man and woman in this audience should leave here tonight feeling in his or her own mind and heart that it can and must be done, then it surely will be. And so, all of you patriots of good character, good conscience, and noble ideals, whom we can reach with the filmed version of this speech in 1,000 other audiences, it is with a great deal of confidence and energizing will to win that we invite you to join us in our epic undertaking. While to all of you great, wonderful friends in this present audience, I certainly extend my very deep thanks indeed for so much patience and attention. Thank you and good night.
Well, maybe you saw it, something burning across the horizon this morning. It is the second time in 3 weeks we've seen it in our area. This time, people took pictures. KPTV's Amy Troy has a look at some Fox 12 viewer photos. Amy, what was it?
Well, Shauna, the jury is still out. Scientists are still looking over all the reports, all the photographs. Luckily, with our clear skies, there are lots of photos. People saw it, they snapped pictures of it, they sent these in to our newsroom. Some described it like a line in the sky grew into a fireball. Now, a pilot described it as contrails left behind a jet. We talked with an astronomer at OMSI. He says there are great pictures, but no reports of a sonic boom, and that's key. He says when a fireball, a piece of an asteroid, enters our atmosphere, we hear it, and there are no reports of this so far.
And looking at the picture, it looked like that was a fairly good sized chunk. Then the explosion, where's the flash? There hasn't been any reports of any such thing yet.
He says we should know what it is in a couple of days. You may remember back on October 30th, many saw a fireball in the sky. That was a meteor entering our atmosphere. It came in over Washington State and then landed in the Pacific Ocean. Reporting live, Amy Troy, the 5 o'clock news.
The fireball flew Friday night. The East Coast does not mean the end of Western civilization as we know it. Although you may have succumbed to the prophecy that some social media stopped running. The sky lit along the entire U.S. East Coast. Those who saw it described it as a thin stripe of blue-green-white, explains Chip Guy, who was driving in eastern Maryland when he and his family saw him. It did not last more than 8 or 9 seconds, and then disappeared, said a spokesman. Guy, Sussex County, Delaware. Frankly, I did not think too much about it, he says, but became concerned when he published it in the web of the local media. Triggered a rapid and overwhelming. That was just the tip of the iceberg of what was going to happen that night. Throughout Friday night, every few seconds a message appeared on Twitter from someone who had seen the meteor. Some of the messages were from the cities of New York and Washington.
That wasn't thunder. That thing was blown up. Oh my God, there it goes again. I don't care, that woke me up. Oh, it's still booming. Holy shit. Okay.
UFO sightings in Canada doubled last year to just under 2,000 reports. Stephen Puddicombe has the details from one place where something strange was spotted.
The 2012 UFO survey done out of Winnipeg, Manitoba has a surprising result. There was more sightings than ever before in the history of the survey. There were 1,981 UFO sightings reported in the country last year, about 5 a day. That's more than twice the number of reports in 2011, when there was 986. Now, the number of cases in 2012 completely eclipses all previous records for the highest reports in 1 year, which was 1,004 in 2008.
Turns out that it was just a matter of that all the sources seem to reply that they had an increase in the number of UFO reports. So it's something across the board. People in Canada were actually looking up into the sky more often than in the previous year.
Ontario had more than 40% of sightings, but that's mainly because their population is so large. In 2012, about 7.5% of all UFO reports were judged to be unexplained. The percentage dropped from 11% the year before. Typical UFO sighting lasted about 15 minutes, and there were all kinds of shapes, sizes, and lights seen in the air, many of which could be explained. But again, 7.5% couldn't be.
Now, an alien invasion, could it really happen? The US military is making plans just in case.
What are the official plans for contact with extraterrestrials? Will they come in peace or war? And what can humanity do in the face of alien invasion?
Yes, it is best to be prepared for anything, and Professor Paul Springer from the US Air Command and Staff College would advise the military in the event of an invasion. He had to get special government clearance to talk to us, and I spoke to him earlier. Paul, it's an incredibly difficult thing, isn't it, to plan to fight back against an enemy we would know absolutely nothing about?
Well, that's absolutely true, but at the same time, we make all kinds of contingency and war plans against enemies that we never expected to face in combat. And so the idea that maybe the enemy will have something technological or doctrinal that we've never foreseen is something that we try to plan for any way that we can.
Well, obviously, if we did get invaded, these aliens would be much more technologically advanced than we are because we didn't even know they were there. How would you go about fighting an enemy that was just so infinitely superior in technology?
Well, the first thing you'd want to try to do is preserve your forces as best you could. You would want to learn as much about the enemy as possible, and that would mean things like trying to find vulnerabilities, trying to capture technology, but survival is your first priority, because if you send all of your forces into the field and have them destroyed by that superior enemy force, then when you do find a vulnerability, you won't have any opportunity to exploit it.
What do you think would be the alien plan? What would they do first?
That really depends on why they're here in the first place. If they're here for the extraction of a specific resource, for example, they might want to just eliminate any resistance that might block them from their objective. If, on the other hand, their goal was actual occupation and conquest, then they would probably have to prioritize anything that they perceive to be a threat to their own dominance. And so that would probably start by wiping out as many communications networks as possible and eliminating as many weapons as might represent some form of threat either to them or to the resources that they're trying to extract. So they might very well want to counter every nuclear weapon, not because it represented a threat to them, but because it might destroy whatever they're here to collect.
Is this something, this kind of planning, that governments around the world do consider?
It is, in the same way that governments do plan for any future potential calamities or conflicts. This is the type of thing that, because it's neutral, you're not provoking a fight or assuming a fight with a country that you might want to maintain a good diplomatic relationship with. If you insert alien in place.
2 years ago, from my research, I'm convinced it's much more serious than that. It's more than a loose-knit network. It is a conspiracy. In 1784, a copy of this document was sent to the illuminist Weishaupt and delegated to foment the French Revolution. Mean the Illuminati was responsible for the French Revolution? Yes, absolutely. The courier was struck dead by lightning as he rode through Ratisbon on his way from Frankfurt to Paris. What about a little divine intervention there, huh? The police found the subversive documents on his body and turned them over to the proper government authorities. After careful study of the plot, the Bavarian government ordered the police to raid Weishaupt's newly organized lodges of the Grand Orient in the homes of some of the most influential associates, including the castle of Baron Bossen-Sonderdorf. Additional evidence was thus obtained, convinced the authorities that documents were a genuine copy of a conspiracy by which the Synagogue of Satan had controlled the Illuminati at the top, planned to use wars and revolutions to bring about the establishment of one kind or another of a one-world government, the powers of which they intended to usurp as soon as it was established. In 1785, the Bavarian government outlawed the Illuminati and closed the lodges of the Grand Orient. In 1786, they published the details of the conspiracy.
The new order of the world, our enterprise is now a success. He said these blind slaves say they are free and highly educated, even as they march behind, notice this word, signs. Have you ever taken time to analyze a sign or a billboard or a logo?
We'll start up here. In 1784, an act of God placed the Bavarian government in possession of evidence which proved the existence of the continuing Luciferian conspiracy. This explains the previous 9 pages, goes into it in detail. We don't have time to do it completely. Conspiracy. Adam Weishaupt, a Jesuit-trained professor of canon law, defected from Christianity and embraced the Luciferian ideology while teaching at Ingolstadt University. In 1770, the money lenders who had recently organized the House of Rothschild retained him to revise and modernize the age-old protocols designed to give the Synagogue of Satan ultimate world domination so they can impose the Luciferian ideology upon what remains of the human race after the final social cataclysm by use of satanic despotism. Weishaupt completed his task on May the 1st, 1776. It's a communist holiday, isn't it? May 1, 1776. The plan required the destruction of all existing governments and religions. In 1776, Weishaupt organized the Illuminati to put the plot into execution. The word Illuminati is derived from Lucifer and means holders of the light. Weishaupt's revised plan required his Illuminati to do the following things to help them accomplish their purpose. 1, use monetary and sex bribery to obtain control of people already occupying positions in high places in the various levels of all governments and other fields of human endeavor. Once an influential person had fallen for the lies, deceits, and temptations of the Illuminati, they were to be held in bondage by application of political and other forms of blackmail and threats of financial ruin, public exposure, and physical harm, and even death to themselves and their loved ones. Number 12, told those present that they must use their wealth to have candidates chosen to public office who would be obedient to their demands and would be used as pawns in the game by the men behind the scenes. The advisors will have been bred, reared, and trained from childhood to rule the affairs of the world. Number 13, control the press. Number 16, infiltrate into the secret Freemasonry to be used for their purposes. That's been documented many times. Number 17, expound the value of systematic deception, use high-sounding slogans and phrases, and advocate lavish promises to the masses, even though they cannot be kept.
I will not forget the wound to our country and those who inflicted it. I will not yield. I will not rest. I will not relent in waging this struggle for freedom and security for the American people. So I don't know where he is. Nor do, I just don't spend that much time on him. We will not tire. We will not falter. And we will not fail. Terror is bigger than one person.
And I remember he was telling me how you're going to see soldiers looking in caves for people in Afghanistan and Pakistan and all these places, and there's going to be this war on terror, of which there's no real enemy.
Who knows if he's hiding in some cave or not? We hadn't heard from him in a long time.
Operation Northwoods, the plan called for innocent people to be shot on American streets. This is the Pentagon. For boats carrying refugees fleeing Cuba to be sunk on the high seas. For a wave of violent terrorism to be launched in Washington, D.C., Miami, and elsewhere. People would be framed for bombings they did not commit. Planes would be hijacked using phony evidence, all of which would be blamed on Castro to justify an invasion of Cuba 40 years ago. An aircraft at Elgin Air Force Base would be painted and numbered as an exact duplicate for a civil registered aircraft belonging to a CIA proprietary organization in the Miami area. At a designate time, the duplicate would be substituted for the actual civil aircraft and would be loaded with selected passengers, all boarded under carefully prepared aliases. The actual registered aircraft would be converted into a drone, remote control plane, their word for it. Takeoff times of the drone aircraft and the actual aircraft would be scheduled to allow a rendezvous south of Florida.
I mean, he's been tested unlike any other president. This 9/11. We have in this past year made great progress in ending the long era of conflict and Cold War. We have before us the opportunity to forge for ourselves and for future generations a new world order, a world where the rule of law, not the law of the jungle, governs the conduct of nations. When we are successful, and we will be.
He argued that the use of any and all means to reach their final goal was justified on the grounds that the ruler who governed by the moral code was not a skilled politician because he left himself vulnerable and is in unsuitable position to his throne. He said, those who wish to rule must have recourse to cunning and to make-believe because great national qualities like frankness and honesty are vices in politics.
Fellow citizens will meet violence with patient justice, assured of the rightness of our cause, and confident of the victories to come. In all that lies before us, may God grant us wisdom, and may He watch over the United States of America.
Snorkelers brought to shore on Catalina Island the odd-looking fish believed to be what the ancient mariners described as sea serpents.
And no wonder. I get it now. KTLA's Dave Meekum is live in Long Beach with more on the unusual find. Incredible. Hi, Dave.
Incredible. What a sight, huh? I can look at that picture forever. Yeah, we're talking the mighty oarfish, and for the crew and others on the schooner over there, Avalon-based, next to the riverboat, what a surprise.
This one's 18 feet long. It took 25 of us to pick it up. It's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity.
Rare and mysterious, that's not overselling it, as oarfish are largely uncharted territory for scientists. Jasmine Santana of the Catalina Island Marine Institute made the discovery of the recently deceased oarfish on Sunday at a depth of about 15 feet on the island's Toyon Bay. One of her counterparts from the Avalon-based Tole Moore was there and spoke with us via Skype from Catalina.
She was snorkeling, sees this giant fish on the bottom of the ocean, swims down, grabs it by the tail, and swims it to the beach. It was awesome. There were people sprinting to go and see this fish.
Louisiana State University's Dr. Mark Benfield, a marine biologist, shared this rare video with KTLA. It was shot in the Gulf of Mexico a couple years back. It is one of a kind, as the giant oarfish spends most of its time slithering through the ocean's deepest depths beneath tropical waters and is rarely seen at the surface. Back in 1996, a group of Navy SEALs found a 23-footer.
In the councils of government, we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex. The potential for the disastrous rise of misplaced power exists and will persist.